Good evening, everyone. On Friday, January 31st, 2025, as we're ending the longest January, I believe, in history, we're going to be discussing the Nicolas Cage movie 8mm tonight on Real Talk. Now, this was a movie that was requested by many people. We put out a post last week asking what we should watch and review on the show, and this movie came up multiple times. So we're just going to be going down the list for a little while, and this was one that was on top of the list. So before we get into the show tonight, please go to all the social media pages. That is the Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, and Instagram, The Other People's Show. And please join us. We have a lot of fun things in store. And once we get out of this dreary winter months, I think we'll be able to do a lot more. So we're looking forward to that. Now, if you know anything about 8mm, it came out in 1999, which is considered one of the best years in cinematic history, along with 1994. I would say probably those 2 years were probably some of the peak years in cinema. Now, I'm not saying that 8mm is one of the reasons that it's one of the greatest years, 1999, and not just cinema, but in everything. But this was a movie that was never supposed to be a mainstream movie. This was originally intended as a small, independent film. And if you don't know anything about it, it's about a private eye he's hired to discover if a snuff film, quote, snuff film, is authentic or not. Hey, Jeff. And that is one of the things that kind of you kind of get into, because you're taken into this world with Nicolas Cage as Tom Wells, the main character. Now, before we get into all that, we'll break it down piece by piece. Now, this was directed by a director named Joel Schumacher, and if you all know some of his work, it varies. He's had some very high highs and some low lows. But some of the movies he's directed, in addition to 8mm, is The Number 23 with Jim Carrey, Phone Booth with Colin Farrell. You've got Batman and Robin, Batman Forever, A Time to Kill, Tigerland, and you've got an assortment of The Client. That was another one of his movies. Falling Down with Michael Douglas, which to be honest with you, that might be a movie we need to cover on the show. I don't really hear anyone talk about that film all that much. Just occasionally, I know the Foo Fighters several years back had a video that was kind of a little bit of a spoof of, Defense in that movie. So Joel Schumacher, like I said, he's had a diverse career, and in this movie is kind of one of his darker features in his filmography. Now, this has a stellar cast. You've got Nicolas Cage as Tom Wells, Joaquin Phoenix as Max California, James Gandolfini as Eddie Poole, Peter Stormare as Dino Velvet, and Catherine Keener as Amy, who is Tom Wells' wife. So you've got a lot of big, heavy hitters in the acting world in this very, quote, seedy movie. And it is a seedy movie. Although, a lot of the times it's broad daylight, and it's a very you've got the sun glistening and beaming down, but you feel this ick, you feel this something you need to wash off, and you go on this journey with this character, and that's what's really intriguing. One of the many things intriguing about this movie, I think. Now, originally Russell Crowe was going to star in this movie when it was only like a $3 to $5 million independent film. It was going to be more handheld and a lot darker in tone as well. But when it got into the hands of Nicolas Cage, it became more of a mainstream Hollywood movie in a certain degree. Now, David Fincher also was the very first choice in directing this film. And if you know David Fincher's work, he's directed some of the. I think his earlier work, to be honest with you, is not to diminish his later work, like the The Killer or The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, anything like that. But I do think his earlier work, primarily Seven and Fight Club, even The Game, those three is probably peak David Fincher, and he was used to dealing with these kind of dark, sinister, almost ungodly themes, especially in the movie Seven. Now, Andrew Kevin Walker wrote this movie, and Andrew Kevin Walker also helped, I believe, write the movie Seven. So there is a connection in that kind of seedy underworld in the world of 8mm and the serial killer film Seven. So there is that connection. And originally, the studio did not like the film, this film, fearing the context was too dark. And despite the success that this movie had, the company chairman took a lot of heat for this movie. Now, as I was doing some research, a couple different places that I found was they had to take this movie to the MPAA 7 different times in order to get an R-rated cut of the film. And this is not really uncommon with a lot of things. A lot of times the directors go ahead and put things in there that's extreme because they know it's going to be cut anyway. So, and if you have the extremes taken out, it's going to seem obviously less extreme than you'll get away with, maybe Tom Green did this with his movie Freddy Got Fingered. He put a lot more grotesque things in there, knowing that they would be cut out in hopes that a lot of the lesser gross things still made it into the movie. And that's one of the things that happen in a lot of these kind of movies, and 8mm is one of those films. Now, Mark Wahlberg turned down the role of kind of, I guess you could say, Nicolas Cage's Tom Wells' sidekick, Max California. And it's, I was thinking about this yesterday, actually the day before yesterday. And, I guess I could probably see that. Now, I don't think Mark Wahlberg is nearly as good of an actor as Joaquin Phoenix is. But I do think that in this particular role, this was Joaquin on his way up. So this wasn't the I'm sure he was intense, but this wasn't the Daniel Day-Lewis way of acting that Joaquin Phoenix often does later on, staying in character, going method. This was not really that kind of a role. I don't think he would have had to went method with this role. And I do think Mark Wahlberg could have done a good job, but I do think this is a nice little feather in the cap of Joaquin in this film. And Bruce Willis also turned down the leading role of Tom Wells. And that's very interesting. If you've seen the film, Bruce Willis, this was pre Sixth Sense. So Bruce Willis, he'd come out, he'd had 12 Monkeys in 1995. And then he had Last Man Standing. That didn't do so well. I think he had a couple of little flops. The Story of Us with Michelle Pfeiffer. I think that was also in 1999. The Jackal, I think that was in 1998. So he had Bruce Willis at this time probably didn't want to go down this dark road because, this is not a guaranteed box office hit. This is a risky fare, especially for Sony Studios in 1999. They had a hit with this, and this was more of a hit internationally and on video than when it really came out. But Bruce Willis, probably didn't think this was a sure bet, so he gambled on The Sixth Sense, and obviously everyone knows how that turned out for all involved. Dino Velvet's trademark is a spider logo outlined in purple. The budget of this movie was $40 million. It made $36.6 million in America and worldwide $96.6. It had a low Rotten Tomatoes score, 24%, and audience score was only at 52, with an IMDb score of 6.6. So we'll get into a little bit of the story now. Now, if you do know this movie, you've got this, this was probably Nicolas Cage when Nicolas Cage could do any project that he wanted to do. And this was the time in my life, and this could be why I really have a nostalgic and a love for this movie, is that there was a Tinseltown had opened up in Bristol, and I had seen, each weekend, I would go to a movie, and I would often go alone because, I like going to movies with other people. Don't get me wrong, but when I'm watching a movie, for the most part, unless I've seen it time and time again, I'm watching the movie. I'm focusing on the screen, the sound, the dialogue, the actions, the cinematography, the score, the lighting. These are the things that I'm thinking about when I'm going into a movie and watching it. I don't mind to hold the girl's hand. But, as far as that, it's not a place that I want to be making out. I don't want to be texting. I don't want to be having a conversation. And I want to focus clearly on what I've paid to see, which is the movie. And that's what I did in 1999 when I went to see 8mm at the 7 o'clock show. The second day it came out. I think it came out in February of 1999, maybe March. It might have been March. But anyway, Cruel Intentions had come out the week before. This movie had come out the week after, and Sony had back-to-back hit movies because they both finished at number one. But Tom Wells is a young private detective, and he's hired by this old widowed woman. Her husband has just passed away. She's going through his belongings, and they come across this 8mm film. They watch it, and in horror, there's a girl that's being possibly murdered after various unsavory things have happened to her. And the woman wants to authenticate and find out if what's on this 8mm film is real or if it's fake. That's the basic premise wrapped up in a nutshell. Now, what's kind of weird is I don't know Andrew Kevin Walker's, how he actually came up with the idea, but there is a George C. Scott movie called Hardcore, and it has a relatable premise as to this. In that movie, Hardcore, I think his daughter or granddaughter goes out to California, ends up in the adult film world, and he goes out there to try to, I think, get her or save her. I've only heard it in reference. I've never actually, watched the movie. But in this movie, Tom Wells is on the mission. He's trying to find out who this girl is, and it's pretty fun going back and watching because now, it would be a lot of technology. It would be, you're using the internet a lot. But back in 99, he did some actual legwork when he was actually going out. He was going out to places, interviewing people, showing people the picture, of the girl. It leads him to find out her name is Marianne Matthews, and it leads him to find her mother, and that her mother still has hope that Marianne's alive. And when I rewatched this movie, this is probably probably I would honestly say the 14th time I've seen this movie, probably. Her mother, and I should have given her credit when I was naming the cast earlier. Her mother does a really good job, and she's in a few key scenes. She's a lonely lady that you can tell. And she thinks about her daughter, Marianne Matthews, every single day. Every single day, whenever the phone rings, she's hoping it's Marianne on the other line. And Tom, when he goes to visit her, he can tell in the desperation in her eyes, the sadness in her voice. She even wants him to just stay for dinner. And he wants to find this girl. He wants to find out if what's on this tape is real or if it's fake. So as he's doing some research, he's going through these underground markets that have, some of these tapes, videotapes, even DVDs. I get probably at the time DVDs and tapes, videotapes that have these hard subjects, hard to watch subjects on the videotapes. And you don't know if these things are real or if they're fake. And he goes into bookstores and trying to find what he's really trying to do is when he's going into these seedy places is in the video of Marianne getting butchered is a man in a mask, a black mask. And on his hand, I think there's a star tattoo. It's a tattoo. I'm pretty sure it's a star tattoo. And that's really all he has to go on. It's in California. This guy with the mask. Later find out his name is Machine. And so therefore he's trying to go through these magazines, watch these tapes, and he has to go through a lot of things. He has to watch a lot of these acts that are being committed on these tapes. And it starts to get to him. It starts to weigh down on Tom. Because you get kind of, hey Corey, you get kind of this feeling to begin with that Tom is a good guy. You know, he's doing the right thing. He's got a wife and a newly born baby at home. He's taking these jobs. He's a good private investigator. And he wants to do the right thing. But as he's doing the right thing, he's starting to be desensitized to a certain extent. Because he's going deeper and deeper in. And what I mean by that is he's watching things that his mind didn't even know really existed. He's going down to the depths and to the depravity of these underground markets. And he can't really even fathom that this even exists. That leads him to Max, California. And Max, played by Joaquin Phoenix, he is a musician who has just not got his big break. So he's able to, make money working at one of these seedy, bookstores that sells this disturbing material. And he doesn't like what he sees. He doesn't endorse what he sees, but it's easy money. And he's reading I think he's reading In Cold Blood, but it's disguised by another book outside of it. And Nick, or not Nick, but Tom realizes that, this kid has some street smarts. And, maybe he knows something that could help me lead to finding out about Marianne Matthews. And he does. They're watching a movie, not together, obviously. But Tom is watching a movie one night, and he notices the person. They've got the mask. They've got the tattoo on their hand. He goes in to get Max, California. Max, who is this? I need to know who this is. No one knows his name. He always wears that mask. He shows up on set with the mask. He leaves with a mask. He's only known as Machine. But that's where the Dino Velvet trademark spider, outline purple spider, comes into play. It's a Dino Velvet trademark. That's true. The movie's parallels Dante's Inferno too. I hadn't thought of that, Jeff. Keith, thank you for that. But that's when they kind of, they end up shifting toward Dino Velvet's production house, which is in New York. And I've skipped over a couple parts here. Before that, I forgot about this, and it's one of my favorite scenes, is the interaction with Eddie Poole, which is played by James Gandolfini. Now, Eddie Poole is a slimy, sleazy, he needed to be Me Too'd producer. He's taking advantage of these girls that come in that want to be stars. And he knows right away because Tom took the photo of Marianne Matthews, and by Eddie's reaction, Tom knew this guy knows something. So he starts to stake him out across the way. And it's pretty cool seeing the 1999 technology because it's not quite as easy as it would be now to set up a little operation like that. But you see all these things that Tom is setting. He's sitting there with binoculars. He's went in and tapped the phone. And, that also helps him go to Dino Velvet. So Tom goes with Max to Dino Velvet's production company, studio, office, whatever, in New York. And he's going to commission a film for $10,000. $5,000 up front, $5,000 because Tom wants to see Dino Velvet work. So Dino Velvet, Machine, and they're at the set, the location. Or here comes Tom, and Tom is wondering, where are the girls? And then all of a sudden, Max California, he's brought out. They've captured Max California because the old little lady that hired Tom's sleazy lawyer was involved in the production of the film with Marion Matthews. So he knew the whole time what's going on, so he kind of let Dino Velvet and, the rest of the cast of unsavory characters know, this guy's a private investigator. Max California ends up being killed. And this is where I think the movie takes a turn. This is when I think it starts to go into the third act of the movie. Maybe right after this. Hey, Cameron. Because what happens, and this is the shift, up until this point, other than sneak around, Tom hasn't really done, he's done investigation. He's doing the legwork. But he's not really had, other than watching these things, which is taking a toll on him. You can tell. But he's not got his hands dirty as far as now he's involved in this. He's deep involved in this. His friend Max California that he brought along just had his throat slit. He's handcuffed to this bed about to get killed by Machine and Dino Velvet. And even the lawyer could be. So all these things happen, and it changes. It changes Tom. Tom went from this just being a job to this being vengeance for Marion Matthews. Because right after this, I think it's right after this, is when, and it's one of my favorite scenes, so I'll go ahead and jump into that. Well, we'll go ahead, we'll finish up the plot. I've rambled on a little too long. But this is more of an emotional movie than it seems to be if you're just using it as entertainment. And it is entertainment. Don't get me wrong. All film, all movies can be entertaining, and this one is. But this is not just, let's just go out on a date and, eat some popcorn. This is a movie that you need to focus and immerse yourself in. And I'm glad that I saw it when I saw it. I honestly don't know if I've ever watched this movie with anyone else. I think I've always watched it alone. And I think I gather more and get more from that, doing it that way. And this isn't a movie that I want to, be on my phone and watch or get up and go out. If I have to go out and use the restroom, I'll pause the movie because this is a movie. It is a slow burn of a movie. That's my only gripe with the movie is I think it's 2 hours and 2 minutes. And I think it could probably be trimmed down to about an hour and 50 minutes if you take some little tweaks here and there. Maybe in the first half, but he gets on the case relatively quickly. He finds out and he's watching the 8mm film within the first 11 minutes of the movie. So you might be able to cut a little fat off. But I don't want to give away the ending. I really don't. I might tell some parts in the third act because I think the third act is when the big change, the character change happens for Tom. But we'll talk about the characters for a moment. We've got Nicolas Cage, and this is a toned down Nicolas Cage. Now, a lot of people like, his Cage-isms and when he goes wild and screams and yells. And he does get mad and upset and he does yell in a couple of places. But he's never unhinged Nick Cage. He's really more subdued. And I think this is where it's a little bit different the first 2/3 of the movie. Because he's more melodic and a little monotone, more quiet, kind of showing strength through quietness and actions. And initiative. And after he realizes, the scene that I just described poorly for you, I described that scene at the set of the Dino Velvet film shoot poorly. You can find that clip on YouTube as well if you just want to watch that clip. Just type in 8mm Dino Velvet scene and it should pop up there. But after this happens, I don't think he realized how deep he was. I don't think that he thought it was going to be to the point where his life was going to be on the line, that his friend Max was going to be killed. And I think that change happens in him because Max was killed, and he saw his throat get slit. He was handcuffed. He'd seen Dino Velvet get shot. He had to stab Machine in the gut with I think a screwdriver. So before all this happened, Tom didn't know how dangerous this situation really, really was. And I think that's what changed him. Because he knows that these sleazy people, these sleazy slobs, degenerates of humans, there's not very many likable people in this movie at all. There's actually Tom and his wife, Marion Matthews, and her mother. There's 4 characters that are redeemable, and the rest aren't. But I think this is a good. There's a few line readings of Nicolas Cage's that I was like, he really did a really good job in this. And I'll talk about one of the scenes that I thought that he did a great job. We mentioned Max California, played by Joaquin Phoenix, and he does a good job. But this is, and just like with Tom Wells, Bruce Willis probably could have played this movie also. But Nicolas Cage has these haunting eyes, these haunting green eyes, and they do haunt throughout the film because he takes on the sadness of the mother, because the mother is the only one that cares. No one else cares about Marion Matthews. No one else other than her boyfriend, ex-boyfriend who happens to be in jail, who is also played by Norman Reedus, a young Norman Reedus. He has about a 3 or 4 minute scene inside jail when Tom goes to visit. You've got James Gandolfini as Eddie Poole, and this is the James Gandolfini that's in True Romance. He's the same kind of sleazebag, maybe even more so. I don't know. They could almost be the same character, but he does such a good job with that character. And you as an audience member hate his character. And then Tom gets Eddie, takes Eddie back to the scene of the crime, the scene of where they shot the movie with Marianne Matthews. He ties Eddie up. He has his gun. Ooh, he's shaking so much. He's wanting to hurt Eddie, to hurt him so much. But he doesn't want to cross that line, because you have to understand that Tom, up until this point, is quote-unquote innocent. He's not extracted. The only thing he's really done is he pushed somebody in the pool, an empty pool, and they broke their leg or something earlier, when he was spying on Eddie and them earlier in the film. So he calls Marianne Matthews his mother. And he says, remember when I said, if you wanted to know what happened to your daughter, would you want to really know what happened, or would you rather not know? And her mother says, I want to know. And Tom says, they killed her. They butchered her. Please let me hurt them. Let me hurt him, please. Please let me hurt him. And then her mother just starts crying. And I like the way they did the next scene. Because building up to that, James Gandolfini as Eddie Poole, he kind of mocks Tom when Tom puts the gun in his face. He's like, pull the trigger. Pull. Oh, you thought this through, didn't you? Your gun, your bullet in my head, do it. I dare you. I dare you. He even licks the tip of the gun, begging, in my miserable life, end it. I dare you to end it. I dare you to do it, Tom. I dare you. And that's when Tom is taunted. That's when he calls Marianne Matthews his mother. And so right after that, it's a good cut scene. And you would think, it would be more effective to see Nicolas Cage as Tom Wells getting the revenge on one of the slime balls that had something to do with her daughter's death. And you would want to see him pistol whipping Gandolfini in the face, beating him to death. But you don't. It cuts to Nicolas Cage as Tom Wells, pans down. You can see his hand shaking with rage. You can see the butt of the gun with blood. And you hear the beatings. You just hear the sound of it, and it's very effective. This was probably the most effective that I've thought about it this time. And you can see the change in Tom. Because the Tom at the very beginning that took on this case would not have done this. That Tom is gone. This Tom Wells has crossed over, and he's almost vigilante-like. I had a tough time saying that. That's almost what he's turned into. Because he's the only voice that this dead girl has. And then that brings us to Peter Stormare. He does great in the movie Fargo. He plays. He's also in an episode of Seinfeld, and he plays. Like I said, a sleazeball, Dino Velvet. He's a director. He's a producer. He's very seedy, very dirty, very underground. And these are cheap productions that he's making. Now, I wish that I would be able to have a cheap, quote, cheap production for $10,000. I think it could be done. I know it could be done. But Dino Velvet, he's not good, but he's not good as far as a person, Dino Velvet. But as far as Peter Stormare acting and character in his, he's great in this role. And I'd say Dino's probably in the movie, I would say 20, probably 25 minutes. Yeah, and Jeff was just saying also a good quote, if you dance with the devil don't change. The devil changes you. And he does say that. And that's what's happened. That's what's happened. Tom Wells has danced with the devil. And the devil didn't change. It changed Tom. And that's the transformation that you see. And that's one of the reasons it's a slow burn of a movie. Because we don't know exactly how many weeks or even months this movie takes place. I would assume probably I think it's relatively kind of a quick period of time over a couple of weeks, a month at most. But there's many times where Tom's reporting back to the older lady. She wires him some money because she's funding this entire thing. Now, this movie, I wouldn't say it ends on a vengeance is taken. Machine gets his in the end. And that's a very, very good scene as well. Like I said, it's a good build-up. 2/3 of the movie, you're in more of a slow burn thriller, somewhat. But when you get to that last 20 minutes from this Eddie Pool scene up until when he tracks down Machine, then it's a completely different movie. The thrills are on nonstop. And one of the things that I like is there's a scene at the very end of this movie where Tom is going into Machine's house. And you hear some heavy metal playing. But then you hear nothing. And all you hear is just the record spinning. That's all you hear. And that goes on for it's probably a 2-minute scene there. I'm trying to find it for you. And it's just very creepy and very effective, and it's very claustrophobic because you're in this little suburban house, and it's not very tall ceilings, and you know the machine is somewhere around as Tom. And is Tom ready for this? I don't know if Tom's ready for this or not, and you don't either. That's the thing. And the build-up is so great of this that you can feel it. You can feel the machine is lurking in another room. And then, as Tom starts to go downstairs, machine turns back on the record, and that's when he pops out. Now, I'm not going to give away the very ending of the movie, because I think you need to enjoy that and experience it yourself. But that was pretty much the plot of 8mm. Now, favorite scene, least favorite scene. Now, I do like this favorite. My favorite scene is that, like I just explained poorly, that of the Dino Velvet set onward is probably the last third of the movie is my favorite part of the movie. But you really just can't. If you watch that on its own, you're going to enjoy it. You're going to, see some thrills and some action sequences a little bit. I don't want to say action sequences, but there's a couple of fights, a couple of, moments with knives or gunplay. But you can't really understand the second half unless you've seen the build-up through the first 2/3 of the movie. I don't really have a least favorite scene. The only thing that I could say is that I wish it were a little bit shorter. But I would have to go through and just edit it myself as I'm watching it in order to make it a little bit shorter. Originality, like I said, there's, Jeff Keith had mentioned Dante's Inferno. It's kind of the same story. You've got a hardcore with George C. Scott. So, but I don't really personally know of another movie that's been out like this since then. I'm sure there has been, and I have flirted with making, a similar movie as this. But yeah, I think it's pretty original. The poster, I do like the poster. You've got Nicolas Cage. It looks like he's holding up the 8mm film. One of his eyes is obstructed, and you see kind of the negative of Marion Matthews' face. And, Nicolas Cage has that haunting glare. Would I recommend this movie to you? Yes. Yes, I would. And I would recommend this movie because it's not going to be an easy watch, per se. Like I said, this is not, This is something that's an intense movie, and you want to sit down and focus solely on the movie. So if you're wanting a feel-good movie, then I would not watch this. If you're wanting a movie where, you want to get deeply involved in it, and you want to be taken on a journey through the underbelly of this sex world and these, abhorrent characters that you don't want to know, characters that you wished you didn't know, but characters that that probably did exist, and these places probably did exist, especially in the 90s. So yeah, I would definitely recommend 8mm. I have it on DVD. I don't think it's streaming anywhere for free or on any streaming services, but it's worth checking out. As is so many movies from 1999. So I'm not exactly sure what is on the list for next week. I'll have to go and see what we did or what everyone suggested. I think that's about it for this edition of Real Talk. A couple of things coming up. We've got The Dark Place Season 2 going to be starting soon. We've got Cameron next Friday. He's on. And we've got Aaron Lee coming up, and a lot of fun things in the works on the show and the other people's show. So please check out all the shows on 92.5 WLSD The Vault. And stay tuned because the Other People show will be back. Or be, well, can't be back. We've not left to come back. But it will come back on in just a moment. Please go to all the social medias and like and subscribe. Thanks, guys.